Jake Miller ran the cleaning rag across the massive observation windows one more time, even though they were already spotless. His stomach grumbled loud enough that he was glad nobody else was around to hear it. 3 days. That's how long the supply ship had been delayed, and he was down to his absolute last meal, a simple turkey sandwich sitting in foil at the bottom of his locker. The Celestial Gateway wasn't like other space stations. This place was huge, almost like a floating city where dozens of alien species came to do business and politics. Right now, though, it was hosting some kind of major peace talks. Jake didn't know all the details. He just knew it meant security checkpoints everywhere, delayed shipments, and a lot of very serious-looking aliens walking around in fancy clothes. He didn't mind, really. His job was simple: clean, fix things, stay out of the way. The pay wasn't great, but every credit he earned went straight back to Earth. To his mom who needed surgery, the hospital kept pushing back because of the cost. That's what mattered. Not the growling in his belly or the ache in his back from 12-hour shifts. Jake finished up the observation deck and headed toward the lower levels. Down in the maintenance areas, it was quieter. Darker too. Most people never came down here unless something broke. Just the way he liked it. Less complicated. He was halfway down Corridor D when he saw her. An alien woman, small and hunched over, was slumped against the wall like someone had just dropped her there. She wore the same gray cleaning uniform he'd seen on dozens of workers around the station. Velans, they were called. One of those species that did all the grunt work nobody else wanted to do. People walked past them like they were furniture. Her skin had this pale grayish color that looked wrong even for a Velan. Like she'd been pushed way past her limits. "Hey," Jake called out, jogging over. "You okay?" She lifted her head slowly and he saw her eyes, large and dark, almost black. There was something in those eyes, something he couldn't quite place. Intelligence, maybe. Or maybe just exhaustion so deep it had settled into her bones. "Tired," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "No food today." Jake felt his heart sink. He knew that feeling. When you're so hungry it makes you dizzy, but you still have hours of work ahead of you. He'd been there before, back on Earth when he was younger. He didn't even think about it. His hand went to his jacket pocket, pulling out the foil-wrapped sandwich. His last meal until the supply ship came in. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe the day after. "Here," he said, kneeling down next to her. "Take it." She stared at the sandwich like he'd just offered her a bar of gold. Her eyes went wide and she looked from the food to his face and back again. "This is yours?" she asked, confusion clear in her voice. "Yeah, but you need it more than me." "Seriously, go on." Jake unwrapped the foil and held it out to her. "It's not much, just turkey and cheese, but it'll help." Her hands shook a little as she took it. She held the sandwich like it was something precious, something breakable. Then she took a small bite and Jake watched her eyes close like she was tasting the best meal of her life. He sat down on the cold floor next to her, his back against the wall. It felt weird just standing there watching her eat. Besides, his feet hurt. "So, rough day?" he asked, trying to make conversation. "Yeah, I get it. These peace talk things have everyone working double shifts. Security's crazy tight too. Can't even get to the cafeteria without going through 3 checkpoints." She nodded but didn't speak, taking another careful bite. She kept watching him though, with this intense look that made him a little uncomfortable. Like she was trying to figure out a puzzle. "I'm guessing you're on the cleaning crew?" Jake continued. "I've seen a bunch of Velans working the conference levels. Must be chaos up there with all those diplomats." "Yes," she said quietly. "Much work. Little rest. Tell me about it." "I've been pulling 12s all week." He stretched his legs out in front of him. "But hey, at least the view's good, right? When you get a minute to look out the windows, I mean. Earth's on the other side of the station right now, but you can see it if you go to the port observation deck." She ate slowly, deliberately, like she was making the sandwich last as long as possible. The whole time, those dark eyes stayed fixed on him. "What's your name?" Jake finally asked. She paused mid-bite. For a second he thought maybe he'd said something wrong. Maybe Velans didn't share names or something. He really should have read more about alien cultures. "You can call me Thera," she said finally. "Thera. That's nice." He smiled. "I'm Jake." "Nice to meet you, Thera." She studied his face for a long moment. "Jake," she repeated like she was testing how the word felt. "You are kind." He shrugged, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Just being human, you know? We look out for each other. Even out here millions of miles from home." Thera finished the last bite of sandwich and carefully folded the foil. "Thank you, Jake." "Anytime," he said, meaning it. He pushed himself up off the floor and offered her a hand. You gonna be okay getting back to work? She took his hand and stood steadier now. Yes. I will remember this. There was something in the way she said it that stuck with him as he watched her walk away down the corridor. Like those words meant more than just a simple thank you. But Jake had 3 more levels to clean before his shift ended, so he shook off the strange feeling and got back to work. The next night, Jake was fixing a busted light panel in Corridor D when he heard footsteps. He looked up and there was Thera, pushing a cleaning cart that looked way too heavy for someone her size. Hey, he called out, waving. You doing all right after yesterday? She stopped and that same surprised look crossed her face. Like she couldn't believe he was talking to her again. Yes, better. Thank you. Jake noticed she still looked tired. You eaten today? She hesitated, then shook her head. Hang on. He dug through his work bag and pulled out a protein bar. Not exactly gourmet, but it'll keep you going. This time when she took it, her hands didn't shake. But she still stared at him with those intense eyes, like she was trying to solve some complicated equation. That's how it started. Over the next week, Jake kept running into Thera during his shifts. At first, he thought maybe it was just coincidence. The station was big, but the maintenance levels weren't exactly crowded. Then he realized she was timing her breaks to match his. Not in a creepy way, just like she wanted company. He started packing extra food. Protein bars, instant noodles, sometimes a spare sandwich if the cafeteria had enough for him to buy 2. Whatever he could manage on his budget. She always looked shocked when he shared, even after the 5th or 6th time. They'd find a quiet spot in the maintenance corridors during their breaks and just sit. The floors were cold and the lighting was harsh, but it beat eating alone in the locker room. Jake did most of the talking at first. He told her about Earth, about the little town in Colorado where he grew up. About his mom who'd raised him by herself after his dad left. How she'd worked 3 jobs to put him through school, and now it was his turn to take care of her. She needs surgery, he explained one night, unwrapping a cup of instant noodles. Something with her heart. It's not gonna kill her tomorrow, but it'll get worse if she doesn't get it fixed. Problem is, insurance won't cover it, and the hospital wants 40,000 credits up front. That is why you are here? Thera asked. So far from home? Yeah. Station work pays better than anything on Earth. Well, better than anything I'm qualified for anyway. He laughed, but it came out bitter. Turns out a degree in literature doesn't open a lot of doors. But I can clean and fix things and they don't care about degrees for that. Thera was quiet for a moment. You sacrifice much for her. She sacrificed more for me. It's just what you do for family, you know? That's when Thera started asking her questions. Strange ones that made Jake think she'd never really talked to a human before. Why do humans give without expecting return? She asked one night, watching him divide his dinner in half. Jake shrugged, handing her the larger portion. Because it's the right thing to do? I mean, we're all stuck on this rock together. Might as well be decent to each other. Even to those with no power, she pressed. No status? Those who cannot repay you. He looked at her, really looked at her. Especially them. They're the ones who need it most, right? Someone who's already got power and status, they've got plenty of people wanting to help them. But people like us. He gestured around the dingy corridor. We gotta look out for each other. Nobody else will. She went very still, studying his face like she was memorizing it. Your species is unusual. Nah, Jake said, blowing on his hot noodles. We're just trying to get by like everyone else. Some of us remember what it's like to need help, that's all. Not everyone saw it that way though. Other maintenance workers started pulling him aside, warning him in low voices. Hey Jake, maybe keep your distance from the villains right now, said Tommy, one of the electrical techs. Things are getting tense up in the diplomatic section. Security's on edge. What's that got to do with Thera? Jake asked. Just saying, man. Wrong place, wrong time, you could get caught up in something. Another time, his supervisor cornered him in the supply room. Miller, I'm hearing you've been fraternizing with the villain cleaning staff. Fraternizing? I'm eating lunch with a coworker. During sensitive negotiations, we need to maintain clear boundaries. Understand? No, actually, I don't understand. She's not a diplomat, she's a cleaner. Like me. His supervisor sighed. Just watch yourself, all right? I don't want to see you get in trouble. But Jake ignored them. Thera was his friend. Maybe his only real friend on this station now that he thought about it. Everyone else was too busy or too tired for more than a quick nod in the hallways. Thera listened. She asked questions. She seemed genuinely interested in what he had to say, even when he was rambling about nothing important. He told her about his favorite books, about the mountains back home, about this dog he had as a kid named Buddy. She told him less, but he didn't push. He figured she had her reasons. What Jake didn't know, what he couldn't see from down in the maintenance levels, was that above them in the fancy diplomatic halls, everything was falling apart. The peace talks that were supposed to save millions of lives were crumbling. Accusations were flying. Trust was dying. And the one person who could stop it all was sitting on a cold floor in Corridor D, sharing instant noodles with a janitor, learning what it meant to be treated like a person instead of a position. Jake was halfway through replacing a burnt-out cooling unit when the alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed in every corridor, and an automated voice echoed through the station speakers. Lockdown initiated. All personnel remain in current locations. This is not a drill. His stomach dropped. In 3 months working on the Celestial Gateway, he'd never heard a full lockdown before. This was serious. His communicator buzzed. It was Tommy. Jake, get somewhere safe, man. Someone tried to poison the Velan envoy. Station's going crazy. Jake's blood went cold. Poison? That meant the peace talks weren't just failing. Someone wanted them to fail. Someone wanted war. His first thought was Thera. She'd be finishing her shift on level 5, probably near the diplomatic quarters. Right where security would be losing their minds. He didn't think. He just ran. The corridors were packed with panicking workers and barking security officers. Jake pushed through, taking the maintenance stairs 3 at a time. His lungs burned by the time he reached level 5, but he didn't slow down. That's when he heard her voice. Please, I have done nothing wrong. Jake rounded the corner and froze. Thera was pressed against the wall, her cleaning cart knocked over beside her. 2 security guards had her cornered, and they didn't look interested in listening. This one's a cleaner, the bigger guard was saying into his radio. Probably planted the device. Taking her in for questioning. I was nowhere near the diplomatic wing, Thera said, her voice steady, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. I have been in the maintenance levels. Yeah, that's what they all say. The second guard reached for her arm. Hey. Jake didn't remember deciding to move. He just suddenly found himself between Thera and the guards. She's been with me all week. She didn't do anything. The bigger guard's eyes narrowed. Miller, right? Maintenance. Yeah. And I'm telling you, you've got the wrong person. Miller, stand aside. This is official business. We're bringing in all Velan workers for questioning. All of them? There's like 200 Velans working this station. You're gonna arrest 200 people because one idiot tried something stupid? We have our orders. Your orders are garbage, Jake snapped. He knew he should shut up, knew he was making things worse, but he couldn't stop. She's innocent. I've been eating lunch with her every night this week. She's never been anywhere near the diplomatic levels. The second guard stepped forward. You need to move, Miller. Right now. Or we'll arrest you for obstruction. Jake's heart was hammering, but he didn't budge. Behind him, he felt Thera's hand grip the back of his shirt. Jake, she whispered. Don't. I'm not letting you arrest her for no reason, he said loudly. You want to question her? Fine. But I'm coming too as a witness. The guards exchanged looks. In that moment of hesitation, Jake made his choice. There was a maintenance access panel right behind them, one he'd fixed just last week. He knew exactly where it led. Sorry about this, he muttered to Thera. Then he grabbed her hand and yanked open the panel, pulling her through into the maintenance shaft before the guards could react. Hey. Stop. But Jake was already crawling through the narrow passage, Thera right behind him. He could hear the guards cursing, trying to follow, but they were too big to fit through the opening easily. Jake led her through a maze of shafts and service tunnels he'd memorized over months of repairs. Left, right, down a ladder, through a crawlspace barely wide enough for his shoulders. His work uniform tore on a sharp edge, but he didn't stop. Finally, they reached a dead-end junction deep in the station's core. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim blue glow. Jake could hear security sweeping the levels above them, but down here they were safe. For now. They sat in the cramped darkness, catching their breath. Jake's hands were shaking. What had he just done? Obstruction of justice? Aiding a suspect? He could lose his job. His visa. Everything. Why did you do that? Thera whispered beside him. Her voice was shaking too. You could lose your job. Your visa. Everything you work for your mother. Jake leaned his head back against the cold metal wall. Because you're innocent and they're scared. People do stupid things when they're scared. They stop thinking and start blaming. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant hum of the station's life support systems. When Thera spoke again, her voice was so soft he almost didn't hear it. I'm tired, Jake. So tired. There was something raw in her words, something that went deeper than physical exhaustion. Tired of the weight I carry. The expectations. The isolation. No one sees me, they see only what I represent. What they think I should be. Jake turned toward her in the darkness. Hey, I see you. Just there. My friend who likes her coffee with way too much sugar and actually laughs at my terrible jokes about broken air filters. He heard her breath catch. Felt her shudder beside him. You don't understand what you've given me, she whispered. What? Instant noodles and bad comedy? He tried to make it light, but his voice came out rough. Just friendship. Nothing special. There was a long pause. Then she said, so quietly he barely heard, to you perhaps. To me, everything. Jake didn't know what to say to that. So he just sat there in the darkness with his friend, listening to the station tear itself apart above them, and hoped they'd both still have jobs when this was over. He had no idea that the person sitting next to him could stop all of this with a single word. No idea at all. They'd been sitting in the darkness for maybe 20 minutes when the alarms got louder. Different this time. More urgent. The automated voice echoed through every speaker in the station, even down here in the maintenance shafts. Alert. Queen Thera of the Velan Empire has vanished from secure quarters. All personnel report to stations. This is a code black emergency. Queen Thera of the Velan Empire has vanished. Jake's entire body went rigid. The words didn't make sense at first. His brain kept trying to rearrange them into something that made sense. Queen Thera. There. He turned slowly in the darkness, looking at the woman sitting next to him. The woman he'd been sharing his lunch with for a week. The woman he'd just hidden from security. Thera? His voice came out strangled. Queen Thera? The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Then the air around her began to shimmer, like heat waves rising off hot pavement. Jake's eyes went wide as the small, tired cleaning woman started to change. She grew taller. Not much, but enough that she was suddenly looking at him eye to eye instead of looking up. Her gray skin began to shift, color bleeding through like watercolors on wet paper. Silver blue, luminescent, almost glowing in the dim emergency lighting. Patterns appeared along her arms and neck, intricate, swirling designs that seemed to move on their own. Royal markings Jake's brain supplied uselessly. He scrambled backward, his back hitting the wall of the shaft. What? How? I'm sorry I deceived you, she said quietly. Her voice was the same, but somehow it carried more weight now. More presence. Jake's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. You're the... He had to stop, take a breath. You're the actual queen. The one here for the peace talks. The one running the entire Velan Empire. Yes. But you were cleaning. You had a cart. You were... He couldn't finish the sentence. His brain felt like it was short-circuiting. Thera, Queen Thera, looked down at her hands, watching the patterns glow and fade on her skin. I used a perception filter. Technology that changes how others see me. It allowed me to walk among the workers, the maintenance crews, the lesser beings my advisors wanted me to conquer. Conquer, Jake repeated numbly. The peace talks were never meant to succeed, Jake. Not really. My military advisors, my council, they wanted me to come here, see humanity's weakness, and approve the invasion plans. She looked at him, and those dark eyes he'd come to know were suddenly terrifying in their intensity. They told me humans were inferior. Primitive. Barely worth the resources it would take to absorb your worlds into our empire. Jake felt sick. So this whole time you were just, what? Gathering intelligence? Spying? At first, yes. She didn't look away, didn't make excuses. I wanted to see for myself. To walk among you without the filters of diplomacy and politics. To see if my advisors were right. And? Jake's voice came out bitter. What did you learn? That we're easy targets because we're stupid enough to help people? Thera flinched like he'd hit her. No. Jake, do you know how long it's been since someone was kind to me? Actually, genuinely kind, expecting nothing in return? I don't. Jake shook his head. None of this was making sense. Decades, she said softly. I have ruled for 37 of your years. In all that time, every person who approaches me wants something. Power. Resources. Favor. Trade agreements. Military support. Everyone who smiles at me is calculating what they can gain. Everyone who speaks to me has rehearsed their words 3 times to get maximum advantage. She moved closer, and Jake forced himself not to back away. You gave me your last meal, Jake Miller. Your last meal. You who sends every credit you earn to your mother for surgery you can't afford. You had nothing and you gave it anyway. You were hungry? I could have ended your hunger permanently with a thought. Her voice broke, raw emotion cracking through the regal composure. I could have given you enough credits to pay for your mother's surgery 100 times over. I could have made you rich beyond your dreams. And you didn't know. You thought I was nobody. You thought I had no power at all. Jake's hands were shaking. I didn't help you because I wanted something. I know, she whispered. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You defended me when it threatened your entire future. You treated a cleaning maid like an equal. Like a friend. You saw me, Jake. Not Queen Thera of the Velan Empire. Just, there. A person who was tired and hungry and alone. Tears were running down her face now, glowing slightly as they traced paths down her silver blue skin. Why? She asked, and her voice was pleading. Why would you do that? Why would you give everything for someone who could give you nothing? Jake swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. Because you were hungry. Because you were in trouble. That's what we do. Humans, I mean. We help. Even strangers. Especially strangers, sometimes. He rubbed his face with both hands. It's not about what we get back. It's about being able to look at yourself in the mirror. That's what makes us human. Queen Thera closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had changed. There was determination there. Decision. I came here expecting to find reasons for war, she said quietly. Proof that humanity was as selfish and violent as my advisors claimed. Instead, I found a reason for peace. I found you. Above them, the alarms continued to wail. Security forces were tearing the station apart looking for their missing queen. Two empires teetered on the edge of war. And Jake Miller, a janitor from Colorado who just wanted to help his mom, was sitting in a maintenance shaft realizing he'd just accidentally befriended the most powerful being in known space. What happens now? He asked quietly. Thera stood and suddenly she looked every inch the queen she was. Now I go save both our peoples from a war neither of us needs. She looked down at him. And I tell them exactly why. Queen Thera emerged from the maintenance shaft with Jake trailing nervously behind her. Her royal guards surrounded her immediately, their weapons raised until they recognized their queen. Their faces went from relief to confusion as they looked at Jake. Your Majesty, we've been searching. I am aware, Thera said calmly. Take me to the negotiation chambers. Now. Jake tried to slip away but she caught his wrist. You're coming with me. What? No. I'm just a janitor. I don't belong in there. You belong there more than anyone, she said firmly. Please, Jake. I need you to see this. So Jake found himself being escorted through the diplomatic levels, still wearing his torn maintenance uniform, tools jingling on his belt. Other diplomats stared as they passed. A human janitor walking beside the Velan queen like they were equals. It was unheard of. The negotiation chamber was chaos when they entered. Dozens of alien species were arguing, shouting, threatening. The human delegation looked exhausted and defeated. Security personnel lined the walls, hands on their weapons. When Queen Thera walked in, everyone went silent. She moved to the center of the room, her royal markings glowing brighter now, pulsing with authority. Jake stayed near the door, trying to make himself invisible. I have walked among you in disguise, Thera announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. For the past week I have lived as a servant. A cleaner. One of the invisible workers you all pass without seeing. The room erupted. Angry voices in a dozen languages overlapped. This is an outrage. The negotiations were conducted in bad faith. Security breach. Thera raised her hand and silence fell like a hammer. Jake had never seen her like this. This was a queen who ruled an empire spanning hundreds of worlds. I did this, she continued, because my advisors told me humanity was inferior. Weak. Selfish. They said humans were barely worth the resources it would take to conquer their worlds and absorb them into our empire. Jake saw the human delegation exchange worried glances. Admiral Hayes, the lead negotiator, looked like he might be sick. I wanted to see the truth for myself, Thera said. So I walked among you as someone powerless. Someone who could offer nothing. Someone you could ignore or abuse without consequence. She turned and her eyes found Jake in the crowd. One human, a janitor earning minimum wage, gave me his last food. His last meal when he had nothing else. He defended me when security came, risking his job, his visa, his entire future. He showed me kindness when I wore the face of a servant. When I could give him nothing in return. Jake felt every eye in the room turn toward him. His face burned. This, Thera said, her voice ringing with conviction, is the species my advisors wanted me to eradicate. This is the species they called primitive and worthless. She looked directly at the human delegation. Any civilization capable of producing individuals like Jake Miller is not one to conquer. It is one to learn from, to ally with, to stand beside as equals. Admiral Hayes stood slowly. Your Majesty, are you saying? I am proposing a new treaty, Thera said. Not of dominance. Not of subordination. A true alliance. Mutual partnership between the Velan Empire and the United Earth Coalition, with terms favorable to both parties. The room exploded again, but this time it was different. Hope, not anger. Possibility, not threats. It took 9 hours of intense negotiation. Jake wasn't allowed to leave. Queen Thera insisted he stay as her personal guest. He sat in an uncomfortable chair in the corner, watching diplomats argue over words and clauses, trade agreements and defense pacts. When they finally signed the treaty, cameras flashed from every direction. The war that would have killed billions was averted. And somehow, despite Jake's best efforts to disappear, the reporters found him. Mr. Miller, how does it feel to know you prevented an interstellar war? Did you know who she was when you helped her? What did you say to convince the Queen to change her mind? Jake stammered through answers, his face red, wishing the floor would swallow him whole. He became the most famous janitor in the galaxy overnight. His face was on every news feed, every broadcast. The human who changed history with a sandwich, one headline read. It was mortifying. But the best part came quietly, privately. Queen Thera personally funded his mother's surgery. The full amount, plus enough for the best doctors and a comfortable recovery. She didn't announce it publicly. Just had the credits transferred directly. When Jake called his mom to tell her, they both cried. A month later, after things had calmed down, Thera visited him one last time. She arrived with a ridiculous amount of food, fancy dishes from a dozen worlds, but insisted they eat sitting on the cold floor of Maintenance Corridor D, right where they'd first met. I have advisors now who understand peace, she said, taking a bite of a plain turkey sandwich she'd specifically requested. Military leaders who see strength in alliance, not just conquest. Diplomats who actually believe in diplomacy. That's good, Jake said, relaxing now that they were alone. But I have only one friend who liked me when I was nobody. She looked at him with those dark eyes. Who saw me as just Thera. Jake smiled. You were never nobody, Thera. You were always you. That's enough. That's always been enough. She was quiet for a moment, looking out through a nearby viewport at the stars beyond. Earth was visible in the distance, a small blue marble. Your people will change the galaxy, Jake Miller, she said softly. Not through weapons or technology or conquest. Through this, through simple human decency. Through kindness without expecting anything in return. Jake thought about that. Someone once told me we're all just trying to survive out here. Thera smiled, raising her coffee cup, fixed exactly how she liked it, with too much sugar. And someone once showed me we can do more than survive. We can be kind. We can be better. She clinked her cup against his. To the night shift. To the night shift, Jake echoed. Later, after she left, Jake went back to work. There were still floors to clean, still broken things to fix. But now when he looked out the viewports at the endless stars, he understood something he hadn't before. Out there in the vastness of space, on an ordinary station, an ordinary human had done an ordinary kindness. He'd shared his lunch with someone who needed it. That's all. Nothing heroic. Nothing special. And somehow the galaxy would never be the same.